My name is Jonas, and for as long as I can remember, I've been the invisible one in my own family. Growing up, I didn't think much of it. I thought maybe all kids felt a little left out sometimes, but as I got older, the truth became impossible to ignore. I wasn't the son my parents wanted. I was just the one they ended up with. My younger brother, Roman? He was everything they ever dreamed of. Born 2 years after me, he was the golden child before he could even talk. He was the cute one, the gifted one, the one everyone cooed over at family gatherings while I sat quietly, forgotten at the end of the table. While I struggled to earn praise, Roman was celebrated for the simplest things. He drew a wobbly stick figure dog in 2nd grade. It got framed and put on the fridge. I came home with a straight A report card. My mom glanced at it and said, "That's good," before tossing it into a drawer. It wasn't just the praise. It was everything. Roman got the new toys, the birthday parties, the attention. He got to pick where we went on vacation, what shows we watched on Friday night, what restaurant we ate at when we went out. And my parents, Patrick and Marin, they just let it happen. They fed the monster. They gave him everything and left me with the crumbs. Roman knew it too. He wasn't just spoiled, he was cruel. I can't count how many times he ruined my day just because he could. If I was reading a book, he'd rip the pages. If I was watching something, he'd throw a tantrum until my dad changed the channel. And when I tried to defend myself, I was the problem. I was the difficult child, the ungrateful one. But I wasn't ungrateful. I just wanted to be seen, to be loved. I remember sitting on the stairs one night when I was about 12. Roman had just gotten a new video game console for no reason, just because. I'd asked for one for Christmas the year before and was told it was too expensive. That night, I listened as my parents gushed about how happy Roman looked. My mom said, "I just love seeing him smile." I bit my lip until it bled. It wasn't just favoritism, it was erasure. I was raised in a home where love had conditions and I didn't meet them. And yet through all of it, I held on to one thing, the belief that if I worked hard enough, they'd see me, that if I became successful, maybe I'd matter. So I studied, I kept my head down. I made honor roll every year, got into extracurriculars, won a statewide debate competition. None of it changed anything. Roman failed half his classes, and they still took him out for steak dinners to encourage him. I got into one of the top colleges in the country with a scholarship, and my parents told me I should stay local so Roman wouldn't feel bad. That's when something broke inside me. I realized that I could spend the rest of my life chasing scraps of affection, or I could choose myself, and for once I did. What I did next, I had to keep secret. But it would change everything. After my parents shot down my dream of attending the prestigious out-of-state college, I sat alone in my bedroom for hours, staring at the acceptance letter in my hands. It was the kind of opportunity most kids only dream of. Full scholarship, 2-year accelerated program, a direct pipeline into high-paying jobs. I had done everything right, and yet they told me no. Not because it was too far, not because they couldn't afford it, because Roman might feel bad. "You need to stay local, Jonas," my dad had said, like it was obvious. "It's better for the family. We don't want Roman to feel overshadowed." I laughed out loud when he said that, not because it was funny, but because it was so ridiculous I couldn't hold it in. That was the moment I decided. I was done playing the quiet, obedient role. I was done dimming my light so Roman's could shine brighter. So I lied. I told them I'd go to the local college. I even agreed to their one condition, that I live in the dorms so I could get the full experience. They were so happy, you'd think I agreed to become a priest. But the truth? I packed my bags and left for the real school, the one across the country, the one that saw my worth. I moved into a campus apartment and started classes, careful not to post anything online, not to call home during odd hours. I told them I was busy with studies whenever they asked, which of course wasn't often. The occasional text from my mom, "Hope school's going well," was the extent of our communication, and honestly, it was the best time of my life. For the first time ever, I wasn't Jonas, the shadow of the golden child. I was just Jonas, the guy who asked great questions in class, who stayed late at study sessions, who helped lead a team project that landed an internship offer from a Fortune 500 company. People saw me, respected me, and they didn't care who my brother was. My scholarship covered most of my tuition, but my dad's local college fund helped pay for rent, food, and books. He thought he was funding Roman's sidekick. Really, he was investing in the son he never believed in. The best part? This school only required 2 years for the program I'd chosen. While Roman was still living at home, sleeping until noon and pretending to look for jobs, I was walking across a stage in a cap and gown, diploma in hand. 6 figures. That was my starting salary. I moved into a clean, quiet apartment, set up a savings account, and started planning for a future where I called the shots. A life where I didn't have to ask for permission. A life where I finally felt free. For the first time ever, I wasn't angry. I wasn't bitter. I just wasn't theirs anymore. And they had no idea. They still thought I was just some average college kid dragging through classes at a nearby school. They didn't know I'd graduated, didn't know I was making more than both of them combined, didn't know I was living states away. They didn't ask, because they didn't care. But eventually they would. And when they did, I planned to be ready. Life had finally reached a quiet rhythm. Early mornings at the office, late nights reading on the balcony of my apartment, and weekends spent exploring a city that felt like it had always belonged to me. Then one morning, my phone buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in months. Dad. I stared at the screen for a moment, not sure if I should answer. My gut twisted. After everything, after years of silence and neglect, why now? I let it ring. He left a voicemail. Jonas, your brother's getting married. We need you home for the wedding. Come early. We'll need your help. No, how are you? No, we miss you. Just an order. Just like always. I listened to the message 3 times, sitting in stunned silence. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to cry. But mostly, I felt numb. Like the years of being overlooked were suddenly collapsing into a single voicemail. For the first time in my life, my father was inviting me to something. And not just anything, Roman's wedding. It was supposed to be the big family reunion moment, right? The prodigal son returns, but I knew better. This wasn't about me. It never had been. I knew the real reason. Roman needed a prop. His big brother, the guy who'd always stood off to the side, now summoned to smile for pictures and help hang fairy lights, to maintain appearances, to prove to their neighbors and friends that the family was whole. It wasn't love. It was optics. I remembered every birthday they forgot, every straight-A report card ignored, every meal where Roman's voice drowned out mine before I even got to speak. I remembered the way my mother used to say, Roman's just special, as if I wasn't, as if I never could be, and now they wanted me back. I didn't respond immediately. I needed space to think. For the first time in years, I had control. 2 days passed, then my mom texted, then my dad again. The pressure started building like a storm on the horizon. Eventually, I responded, short and direct. Sorry, I can't make it. That was it. No explanation, no excuses, just the truth. I expected disappointment. What I got was guilt, manipulation, and desperation. The texts started pouring in. Do you really want to miss your brother's big day? It would mean the world to him. We're a family, Jonas. You only get one. I almost laughed at that one. You only get one? They'd spent my entire life pretending I wasn't even part of theirs. Then came the threat. My dad called again. If you don't show up, we're done helping you with tuition. We'll pull funding immediately. There it was, the leverage, the illusion that I still depended on them, that I was still the quiet, obedient son desperate for their approval. But they didn't know the truth. I leaned back in my chair, smiled to myself, and texted back, Go ahead. I'm not coming, and I don't need your money. Because what they didn't know, what they never even bothered to ask, was that I had already graduated, and that I made more than both of them combined. It didn't take long for my phone to explode. Calls, voicemails, angry texts, all from my father. At first it was confusion, then rage, then desperation. He demanded to know where I'd been, what I had done with his money, and how I had the audacity to lie to his face. His voice cracked through the voicemail like a dam finally breaking after decades of pressure. I listened to every word in silence. Apparently, after I refused to attend Roman's wedding, my father marched down to the local college, the one he thought I had been attending, to teach me a lesson. I imagined him walking in, smug, certain he'd show me who's in control, only to find out I was never enrolled. That must have felt like a punch to the gut. His voice in the next message was raw, almost panicked. "Jonas, where the hell have you been? What have you been doing with the money we gave you?" I couldn't help but laugh, not out of cruelty, but out of relief. After years of pretending to be invisible, I was finally seen, not for who they imagined me to be, but for the man I had become. So I called him back. "Dad," I said, calm as ever, "I graduated a year ago." Silence on the other end. "I got a scholarship. It paid for most of it. Your money helped with rent and books. And for that, I thank you, but I don't owe you anything." He tried to interrupt, but I didn't let him. "I have a job now, a great one. I make 6 figures and I live states away. I've been doing just fine without you." Then I told him the part that really broke him. "I make more than you, Dad." It was like detonating a bomb. He exploded. "You lied to us. We supported you." He went on a tirade about betrayal, about how I was ungrateful, about how he and Mom had sacrificed so much for me. I almost asked him what exactly they had sacrificed, but I bit my tongue. Some things aren't worth wasting breath on. Then he delivered the real kicker. "The only way I'll forgive you is if you show up for Roman's wedding and help keep this family together." There it was again, image over intimacy, reputation over relationship. He didn't care about me. He cared about how the neighbors would talk if I didn't show up, about how it would look if the good son wasn't at his brother's big day, but I was done being part of their charade. "I don't need your forgiveness," I said, "and I don't want it." The words came out easier than I expected. I told him he could keep pretending Roman was his only son, because I was done pretending I had parents who ever truly saw me. Then I ended the call, blocked the number, and just like that, I cut the last thread tying me to a lifetime of emotional neglect. For the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of disappointing them. I wasn't afraid of being alone, because the truth was, I had always been alone with them. Now, I had myself. It had been 3 weeks since I cut off my parents. No texts, no calls, no more guilt-tripping voicemails or desperate threats. Silence. I finally had peace. Or so I thought. That illusion shattered when an unknown number lit up my phone one evening. Normally, I wouldn't have answered, but something told me to pick up. It was my mother, sobbing, her voice cracked like a broken record. "Jonas, please, I just want my son back." I stood frozen in my kitchen, phone pressed to my ear. This was the woman who never hugged me on my birthdays, who once threw out my report card to praise Roman's crayon sketch. Now she was acting like she had lost something precious? I didn't buy it, not for a second. Still, I didn't hang up, not yet. There was a tremor in her voice, one that didn't sound like guilt or love, it sounded like panic. So I called my aunt, her sister, and that's when the truth finally spilled out. Roman's wedding, it never happened. His beautiful fiancé, a complete scam artist. Apparently, she had convinced my family, yes, including my parents, to invest their savings into some shady, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity just before the wedding. She promised big returns, said it was a chance to secure Roman's future. Instead, she vanished, took the money, every last cent. There was no ceremony, no honeymoon, no happily ever after. Just a trail of overdrafted bank accounts and broken pride. But it gets worse. My aunt told me that my dad had also made a reckless business decision. He'd been clashing with a key employee, something about a deal gone bad, and it led to a major loss for his already declining company. Then, in a desperate attempt to save it, he took out a massive loan and used the house as collateral. Now they were losing the only thing they had left, their home. My parents, who once looked down on me for being the average son, were now crammed into a run-down studio apartment, barely making ends meet. And that's why she called. Not because she missed me, Not because she realized how wrong she'd been, but because the safety net had ripped wide open and they needed someone to cushion the fall. They thought I was the safety net, the forgotten son, the invisible boy, the one they starved of love but expected to rescue them when it all crumbled. But I wasn't that boy anymore. Roman, their golden child, their pride and joy, was now the center of their disaster. And in their eyes, I was the backup plan. But I don't play backup anymore. I blocked her number again. They thought they could guilt me into coming back, that I would swoop in and save the day, like the good son they never cared to raise. But I've learned something vital. Just because someone shares your DNA doesn't mean they deserve your loyalty. My childhood was a sacrifice to their favoritism. They made their choices, and now they get to live with them, without me. I thought blocking their numbers would be enough. I truly believed that cutting contact meant freedom, that silence equaled peace. But toxic people don't go away quietly, especially not when they're drowning. About a week after I blocked Mom again, I came home from work and saw something that made my stomach drop. My parents, on my front porch, they looked unrecognizable. Dad, once so proud, always in tailored slacks and button-downs, stood in faded jeans and a wrinkled polo. His hair was thinner, grayer, like stress had aged him in fast forward. Mom clutched her purse like it was all she had left in the world. Her makeup was smudged, her blouse stained, and for the first time in my life, she looked small. I didn't even open the door. Through the glass, I saw her mouth the words, "Please." But I couldn't do it. I couldn't let them in. Instead, I turned around, walked to my kitchen, and waited. My hands trembled as I grabbed a bottle of water. Not from fear, anger, a deep boiling anger. They knocked again. Then Dad shouted through the door, "Jonas, we just want to talk. You're still our son." Son? They remembered I existed now? I walked back to the door and cracked it open just enough to say one thing. "Go." Mom's voice cracked. "We don't have anywhere else to turn." "That's not my problem," I replied. She stepped closer. "We raised you." "No," I said coldly. "You raised Roman." "I just existed." That hit her. Her eyes welled up, but I didn't care. I'd spent my entire life waiting for them to look at me the way they looked at him. And now, when everything fell apart, I was suddenly worthy? They started begging. "We spent our last money on this flight," Dad said. "We're living in a trailer. Please, Jonas, help us." I wanted to scream. Six-figure Jonas. That's who they were begging. Not the Jonas who got straight A's and was ignored. Not the Jonas who sat alone at dinner tables while they fussed over Roman's soccer schedule. No, they wanted the man who made it without them. And I wasn't about to be their lifeboat. I slammed the door. I could hear Mom crying as they walked away. I leaned against the wall and stared at nothing for what felt like hours. Later that night, it got worse. Roman showed up, not swaggering like he used to, but broken. Puffy eyes, unshaven face, his designer sneakers stained with dirt. He looked like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Jonas," he whispered, "please." "I messed up. I know I was a jerk to you, but I need you, man." I laughed bitterly. "You need me? Since when?" He broke down. "Mom and Dad are turning on me. They said I ruined everything, that I owe them. I don't have anywhere to go." Every part of me wanted to slam the door again, but something made me pause. He looked exactly how I used to feel. Alone. But this wasn't about revenge. I wasn't going to play the hero in their tragedy. I wasn't going to let guilt tie me back to pain. "I warned you once," I said, "and now I'm saying it again. Leave, Roman. You're not welcome here." He begged, but I shut the door without another word. And this time, I meant it. No more chances. No more saving the people who once watched me drown. I locked the door, turned off the porch light, and let the silence return. For real this time. It's been 3 weeks since I closed the door in Roman's face. I haven't heard a word since. Not a call, not a text, not a single knock at my door. The silence is eerie, but it's also peaceful. Like I finally turned off a storm that had been raging in the background my whole life. But the universe has a funny way of tying up loose ends. This morning, I got a call from my aunt, my mom's younger sister, Aunt Lisa. We hadn't spoken much before all this, but she reached out after learning about the chaos from mutual relatives. She said she just wanted to check in. But really, I think she had something she needed to get off her chest. "They're losing everything, Jonas," she said. I sat on the edge of my bed, heart weirdly calm. "The house is gone," she continued. "They had to foreclose after defaulting on the loan. Patrick's company officially folded last week, and Marin's been let go from the part-time job she picked up after retirement." I didn't respond. What was there to say? She added, "They're blaming each other now, screaming matches every day, and they've completely cut ties with Roman." That made me pause. "Wait, they what?" "Yeah, your dad said Roman's the reason they're broke, that if he hadn't trusted that fiancé, they'd still have their savings." I swallowed hard. The golden child was no longer gold. It was ironic, almost poetic, how they spent their lives worshiping Roman, enabling him, sacrificing everything to protect his ego, only for it all to explode in their faces. Now they were fractured. The family unit that I had been cut out of for so long was crumbling without me, and still, I felt no pleasure, only clarity. Aunt Lisa sighed. "They keep asking what they did wrong." I laughed under my breath. "Everything." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "You don't owe them anything, Jonas," she said gently. "I just thought you should know." "I appreciate that," I replied, "but I've already made peace with the past." And I meant it. That call didn't shake me. It didn't drag me back into the vortex of guilt and responsibility. If anything, it solidified my decision to walk away. I spent years craving love from people who never saw me. Now I finally see myself. That evening, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker on one by one. A warm breeze rolled through, and for the first time in forever, I didn't feel like a kid left out in the cold. I felt like a man who had chosen his freedom. I took a sip of tea and whispered to myself, "I'm done being the forgotten son." They can live in the ruins they created. I've built something better, with my own hands, on my own terms, and I'm never looking back. I should have known peace was temporary. I had just finished a long week of work and was curled up on the couch with a blanket and a documentary playing low on the TV. Life had started to feel normal again, quiet, calm, even joyful at times. But then, the knock came. It wasn't loud, just 3 soft taps on the door, but my chest tightened instantly. Something in my gut told me this wasn't just a neighbor. I peeked through the peephole, and there they were, my parents, Patrick and Marin, the people who raised me. Technically, the same parents who ignored my birthdays, dismissed my dreams, and sacrificed me on the altar of Roman's ego. Now they were standing outside my apartment, looking 10 years older than the last time I saw them. My dad's shoulders slumped like someone had carved the arrogance out of him. My mom was holding a tissue to her face, though there were no tears, just the kind of performance I'd seen 100 times growing up. I didn't open the door. "Jonas," my mom called, her voice muffled. "Please, we need to talk." I said nothing. My dad spoke next. We just want to make things right. We made mistakes, big ones, but we're still your parents." I nearly laughed. They wanted to talk about mistakes now? I cracked the door just a few inches, enough to make eye contact, but not enough to let them in. "You showed up at my home," I said, voice low. "How did you even find me?" My mom sniffled. "We asked some of your old friends. We were desperate. We've lost everything." I didn't respond. "We're living in a 1-bedroom apartment now," my dad added. "We used our last money on flights to get here. We didn't know where else to go." That was when it hit me. They weren't here because they missed me. They were here because they had nothing left. No house, no company, no golden sun. Just the one kid they ignored until they needed something. I clenched my jaw. "So now that your kingdom's fallen, you remember you have another son?" My mother opened her mouth, but I stopped her. "I don't owe you anything. You made your choice years ago." "We raised you," she said softly. "No," I replied. "You raised Roman. You tolerated me." My dad stepped forward. "Please, just give us a chance." I shut the door in their faces, not violently, not with anger. Just, firmly like closing a book I had finished long ago. They knocked again, called out a few more times, and then, after several long minutes of silence, I heard their footsteps retreat. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I didn't even feel satisfaction. What I felt was finality. They had finally come to me. But not for love, for survival. And I was done being their last resort. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine, turned the volume up on my TV, and texted my building's front desk. If a Patrick or Marin tries to visit again, do not let them up. Then I blocked their numbers one final time. I've walked through the fire they built around me. I refused to go back into the ashes. I thought the door slamming in my parents' faces would be the end of it. I was wrong. It was a quiet Sunday morning. I had just finished my second cup of coffee and was lounging on the balcony, watching the city stretch awake beneath a soft gray sky. There was a strange calm in the air, like the kind that comes before a storm. And sure enough, by noon, the storm arrived. Another knock at the door. This time it was softer, hesitant. I almost ignored it. But something told me to look. I opened the door and nearly laughed out loud. Roman, the same brother who used to mock me for reading, who ruined my birthdays, who never once stood up for me, not even when it would have taken nothing. Now he was standing on my doorstep, eyes puffy, shoulders drooped, hands trembling like a child who'd lost his way. "Jonas," he said, his voice cracking, I needed to see you." I didn't say a word. He took a deep breath and started rambling. "I messed everything up. I know that. I've been a jerk for years, and now Mom and Dad, they're cutting me off. They blame me for everything, the wedding, the money, the house. They said it's all my fault, and maybe it is." His voice broke completely then. "I miss having a big brother," he whispered. I stood there, frozen, processing the absurdity of it all. The same brother who once hid my acceptance letter out of jealousy. The same guy who stood silent when I begged for support growing up. Now he missed me. "I don't know what you want from me," I finally said, voice quiet but firm. "Forgiveness? A hug? A couch to sleep on?" He shook his head. No, I'm not here to take anything. I don't have anyone left, and you're the only one who ever really—" I cut him off. "No, Roman, I was never the one who really anything. You never saw me. None of you did. And now that your fantasy crumbled and your perfect life turned to dust, suddenly, I exist?" He opened his mouth to respond, but I kept going. "You got the parents, you got the attention, you got the love, and you treated it all like garbage. Now you want to come back because your castle fell? I'm not your safety net." Tears welled in his eyes. "Jonas, please, I'm sorry." I stared at him, really stared, and for the first time, I didn't see the golden child. I saw a scared man, one who had been so coddled by love he never learned to stand alone. "I believe you're sorry," I said softly, "but I'm not your brother anymore. Not the way you want me to be?" His face crumpled. I stepped back and began to close the door. "If you ever show up again," I said, "I'll call the cops, and that's not a threat, it's a promise." The door clicked shut. I locked it, deadbolt and all. Then I sat back down, heart thudding but steady, and for the first time since I was a kid, I whispered the words out loud. "I survived you." Roman was the storm of my childhood, but I had become the quiet after, and I wasn't letting the storm back in. After Roman left, there was silence, not just in the apartment, but inside me, a kind of stillness I hadn't known in years. I didn't realize how much of my energy had been spent carrying the weight of my family's indifference, their manipulation, their games. With the door closed and locked, it was as if I'd finally let go of the rope in a tug-of-war I never wanted to be part of. I won't lie and say it was easy. That night, I stared at the ceiling for hours, wondering if I had gone too far, wondering if cutting them off made me cold, cruel. The voice in my head, the one that sounded suspiciously like my father, whispered that I was ungrateful, selfish, dramatic. But I reminded myself that boundaries aren't cruelty, they're survival. And I was finally surviving. It had been nearly 2 months since the showdown with Roman. I hadn't heard a word from anyone since. No calls, no texts, no letters, just blessed absolute silence, until last week. It started with a voicemail, one from a number I didn't recognize. I almost deleted it, but curiosity won. It was my mother, crying, again. "I just want my son back," she sobbed. "Jonas, please, you don't know what it's like to lose everything. We're living in a trailer. Your father, he's not well, and Roman's barely speaking to us." She talked about family, about forgiveness, about how they missed me, but not once did she mention the years they ignored me. The scholarship I fought for alone, the birthdays they forgot, the wedding they tried to emotionally blackmail me into attending, the threats to cut my tuition, all for the sake of keeping up appearances. This wasn't about love, it was about desperation. They wanted help now, because Roman, their precious golden child, had wrecked everything, because the woman they adored had conned them, because the empire they built on favoritism and denial had collapsed, and now somehow they remembered they had another son. But I wasn't the backup plan. I wasn't the emergency fund. I was done. Still, the call shook me. It pulled at old wounds and made me doubt myself again. So I did something I hadn't done in years. I called Aunt Laura, my mom's sister, the only relative who had ever shown me any kind of consistent kindness. She was the one who used to sneak me gifts when my parents forgot. The one who always sent a Christmas card addressed just to me. She answered on the first ring. "Jonas?" I almost broke down right there. She knew everything. She had heard the stories, pieced together what she could over the years. But this time, I told her all of it. How I got into that college, how I lied to my parents just to have a future, how I built a life without them. She listened without interrupting, without judgment, and then she said something I'll never forget. "You're not wrong, Jonas. You're just finally free." That night, I slept better than I had in months, because for the first time, someone from my family, my real family, acknowledged my pain. Not as an inconvenience, not as something to sweep under the rug, but as something that mattered. I may never go to another family gathering. I may never speak to my parents again, but I'm building a new kind of family now, one rooted in respect, in truth, in love, and maybe, just maybe, in peace.